This revenge story contains intense acts of retribution that may be excessive and could be disturbing to some viewers.
Victoria had been complaining about her phone for months, said the battery was shot, the screen was cracked, and it was generally being a pain in the ass. So, for her birthday, I surprised her with the newest model. She was thrilled. "Oh, Victor, you shouldn't have," she'd said, but I saw the genuine excitement in her eyes. The next day, I told her I'd handle transferring all her data to the new phone. "Just relax," I said. "I'll take care of everything." She gave me a grateful kiss and headed out to meet her friends for lunch. I started the process, connecting her old phone to my computer, backing up all the photos, contacts, and messages. It was tedious, but I didn't mind. I liked doing things for her. Then, I hit a snag. The old phone was encrypted, and I needed her password. I texted her, me. "Hey babe, need your old phone password to transfer your data." "What is it?" Victoria, "Oh shoot, I forgot. It's Sunshine123. Sunshine123. Cheesy. But that was her. I entered the password and the backup resumed. Everything seemed normal until I started going through the backed up data to make sure everything was there. Photos were easy enough. Contacts fine. Then I got to messages. I clicked on the messaging app, expecting to see the usual conversations with her girlfriends, family, and me. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize. Jem. Curiosity piqued. I tapped on the conversation. The messages started innocently enough, work-related stuff. But then, the tone shifted. Flirty, suggestive, then explicit. "Jem, thinking about last night, you were incredible." My blood ran cold. Last night? Victoria had told me she was working late. I scrolled further, my hands shaking. The messages became increasingly graphic, detailed descriptions of their encounters. And then, the same line that seared itself into my brain before. "Victoria, you're better than my husband." The phone slipped from my grasp and clattered onto the desk. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. Jem? Who the hell was Jem? I went back to the contacts. Jem. Jem from accounting. Jem, who always lingered a little too long when he talked to Victoria at company events. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Victoria was having an affair. With Jem, I felt sick, betrayed, and consumed by a rage that threatened to overwhelm me. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. Act normal, I told myself. Act like you don't know anything. But inside, a storm was brewing, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that things would never be the same again. The discovery had ripped a hole in my reality. Victoria, my Victoria, the woman I thought I knew better than myself, had been living a double life. The betrayal was a physical weight, crushing me from the inside out. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, before I completely lost it. I waited until Victoria was gone, out the door with a breezy, "See you tonight, honey," that now sounded like a carefully rehearsed lie. Then, I grabbed my phone and dialed Jake. "Jake," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I need you. It's bad." There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched into an eternity. Jake knew me. He knew something was seriously wrong. "What is it, Victor? What's happened?" I took a shaky breath. "Victoria, she's been cheating on me. I found messages, pictures, with some guy from her office. This Jem." The words felt like shards of glass, tearing their way out of my throat. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear the faint sounds of Jake's life in the background, the muffled murmur of the television, the clatter of dishes. But he didn't say anything. He just listened. He always listened. Finally he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You sure about this, Viktor? You sure it's not some kind of mistake?" "I saw the messages, Jake," I said, my voice rising. "I saw the pictures. There's no mistake. She's been sleeping with this guy, lying to my face, for God knows how long." Another silence. Then, "All right, where are you? We're coming over." "My place," I said. "As soon as possible. I don't know what to do." They arrived in force. Jake, solid as a rock, his face grim and determined. Marcus, bouncing on the balls of his feet, his energy crackling with barely suppressed rage. And Ryan, quiet and watchful, his eyes narrowed like a predator sizing up its prey. They didn't say much. They just waited for me to speak. I showed them the evidence, the messages, the pictures, the timestamps. The room went quiet. The air grew thick with tension. Marcus swore under his breath. "That son of a bitch." Ryan just stared at the phone, his face a mask of cold fury. "Who is this Gem guy? You know him?" "Works in accounting," I said, my voice flat. "Always around. Always friendly with Victoria. I never suspected a thing." Jake stepped forward and clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm. "Okay, Viktor. What do you want to do? What's the plan?" The question hung in the air. What did I want to do? I wanted to erase the images from my head, to rewind time, to make everything go back to the way it was. But I couldn't. The damage was done. "I want to make them pay," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and pain. "I want them to feel what I'm feeling right now. I want them to regret ever crossing me." Jake nodded slowly. "All right, we can do that. But we need a plan. We need to think this through." We spent the next few hours hashing it out. I paced the room, fueled by adrenaline and rage, while Jake, Marcus, and Ryan analyzed it calmly. We considered different options, from confronting them directly to seeking legal revenge. "I want them humiliated," I said, my voice rising. "I want everyone to know what they did. I want them to be shamed and disgraced." Marcus grinned, a flash of white teeth in the dim light. "I like the way you think, buddy." Ryan, ever the pragmatist, cautioned against anything too extreme. "We need to be careful," he said. "We don't want to end up in jail." Jake, as always, was the voice of reason. "We need to find a way to make them pay without destroying ourselves in the process." The plan began to take shape, a dark and twisted thing born out of anger and betrayal. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best we could come up with. It would send a message, it would make them hurt, and it would, hopefully, give me some sense of closure. The Red Roof Inn was a monument to cheap desperation, the kind of place where broken dreams went to fester and die. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow on the peeling paint and cracked asphalt. It felt appropriate. We were early, of course, parked a block away in Marcus's beat-up Ford pickup, the engine idling, the windows down. The night air was thick with humidity and the smell of exhaust fumes. The silence inside the truck was almost unbearable. I kept replaying the images in my head. Victoria's face, that carefully constructed mask of innocence, now shattered into a million pieces. Jem's smirking, self-satisfied grin, now replaced by a chillingly blank expression. The messages, the pictures, The lies. My hands were clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, making me jittery and restless. I wanted to explode. "Easy, man," Jake murmured, his voice low and steady. He always knew how to calm me down, how to keep me from losing control. "Just breathe. Remember the plan." I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. The plan. A carefully constructed scheme designed to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. It was risky, maybe even reckless, but it was the only thing that felt right. Finally, headlights. Victoria's Honda Civic, turning into the parking lot. My stomach lurched. The rage, which had been simmering just below the surface, boiled over. "Here we go," Ryan muttered, his voice tight. I watched as Victoria got out of the car, her movements hurried and furtive. She glanced around nervously, as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. She hurried to room 14 and disappeared inside. A few minutes later, another car. A dark sedan, sleek and expensive. Jem. He parked next to Victoria's car, adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror, and sauntered towards the same room, a smug air of confidence about him. "All right, that's it," I said, my voice trembling with barely suppressed anger. "Let's do this." We piled out of the truck, the slam of the doors echoing in the night. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My palms were sweating. "Remember," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we stick to the plan. No one gets seriously hurt. We just want to scare them. Make them pay." Jake nodded, his face a mask of grim determination. Marcus cracked his knuckles, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Ryan simply reached into the bed of the truck and grabbed the tire iron, testing its weight in his hand. The initial shock of the confrontation had worn off, replaced by a simmering tension that crackled in the small motel room. Victoria and Jem were subdued, but their eyes burned with a mixture of fear and resentment. They were cornered, but not broken. Not yet. "What do you want, Viktor?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling slightly. She was still clutching the sheets tightly around her, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. "Why are you doing this? What do you hope to accomplish?" "Accomplish?" I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. "I want you to understand the pain you've caused, the damage you've done. I want you to experience a fraction of the humiliation and betrayal that I've been feeling for the past few days." "We made a mistake," Jem said, his voice low and pleading. Marcus still had him pinned against the wall, his arm twisted painfully behind his back. "We're sorry. Can't we just talk about this? Can't we work something out?" "Talk?" I scoffed. "You think talking is going to fix this? You think words can erase what you've done? You think I can just forgive you and forget about everything? You're delusional." I turned to Jake and Ryan. "Take them," I said, my voice firm. "Let's go." Jake hesitated. "Where are we going, Viktor? What are you planning to do?" "You don't need to know," I said, my eyes fixed on Victoria. "Just trust me. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just need to talk to them in a more private setting." Ryan nodded and tightened his grip on Jem. Jake sighed, but didn't argue. He knew better than to push me when I was in this state. We herded them out of the motel room and into Marcus's truck. Victoria was still sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Jem remained silent, his expression a mixture of fear and resignation. The drive was short and tense. We headed to an abandoned industrial park on the outskirts of town, a desolate landscape of crumbling buildings and overgrown weeds. It was the perfect place to disappear. We pulled up to a deserted warehouse, its windows boarded up, its walls covered in graffiti. The air was thick with the smell of decay and neglect. "Get them inside," I said, my voice cold and emotionless. Jake and Ryan led Victoria and Jem into the warehouse. The warehouse air was thick with the smell of mildew and fear. Victoria and Jem were tied to the chairs, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and defiance. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a desperate, pleading silence. "What are you going to do?" Victoria whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, Victor, don't do this. I beg you." I didn't answer. The rage, which I'd briefly managed to control, surged back, hotter and more potent than before. I looked at Jake, Marcus, and Ryan. Their faces were grim, their eyes filled with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "Do it," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. Marcus stepped forward, a pair of clippers in his hand. The buzzing of the motor filled the warehouse, a harsh, mechanical sound that sent shivers down my spine. "No, please, don't!" Victoria screamed, struggling against the ropes. I grabbed her by the hair, yanking her head back. I said softly, "I heard that shaving one's head is a form of apology in Japan. You like Japanese things, didn't you? I'll make you do it the Japanese way." I wanted her to feel my pain, to understand the depth of my betrayal. "You did this, Victoria," I said, my voice cold and hard. "You brought this on yourself." Marcus started shaving her head. The long, dark strands of her hair fell to the floor like discarded memories. Victoria sobbed uncontrollably, her body shaking with each snip of the clippers. Jem watched, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't say a word. He knew what was coming. When Marcus was finished with Victoria, I released her. She slumped in the chair, a broken, sobbing mess, her shaved head glistening in the dim light. "Your turn," I said to Jem, my voice a monotone. Ryan grabbed Jem and forced him to his knees. Marcus started shaving his head. Jem closed his eyes, bracing himself for the humiliation. When they were both bald, I signaled to Ryan. He pulled a bottle of hair removal cream from the duffel bag. "What is that?" Victoria whimpered, her voice barely audible. "Something to even things out," I said, my voice a low growl. "Something to make sure you never forget this night." Ryan slathered the cream on their scalps, covering every inch of exposed skin. "This is for thinking you could get away with it," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "This is for disrespecting me. This is for breaking my heart." The cream started to burn. Victoria and Jem started to squirm, their faces contorted in pain. "It burns! Please, stop it!" Victoria screamed, tears streaming down her face. I ignored her. I watched them suffer, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. After a few minutes, I nodded to Jake. He grabbed the industrial hose that was coiled in the corner of the warehouse. The water was ice cold, shocking them as it hit their burning skin. The hair removal cream washed away, leaving their scalps red and raw. Victoria was sobbing uncontrollably. Jem looked like he was about to pass out. "You think this is bad?" I said, leaning in close, my voice a dangerous whisper. "This is just the beginning." But even as I said the words, I knew I was lying. I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't inflict any more pain. The rage had dissipated, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. I stepped back, away from Victoria and Jem. "Untie them," I said to Jake and Marcus, my voice barely audible. They hesitated, their faces etched with confusion. "What are you doing, Victor?" Jake asked. "What about the plan?" "There is no plan," I said, my voice flat. "It's over. I can't do this." They reluctantly untied Victoria and Jem. As they stood up, I turned away, unable to face them. "Get out," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Get out of my sight, and don't ever contact me again." Victoria and Jem didn't hesitate. They turned and fled from the warehouse, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there alone, in the vast, empty space, the silence broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. The revenge was over, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my life. The drive back was a blur. The city lights seemed to mock me, their bright promise of life and connection a stark contrast to the desolate emptiness inside me. I dropped Jake, Marcus, and Ryan off at their places, offering a weak, "Thanks, guys," but knowing the words were inadequate. They'd been ready to follow me to hell and back, and I'd just given up. I wasn't sure if they respected me for it or pitied me. Returning to my apartment alone was like entering a mausoleum. Every object, every photograph, every familiar scent was a reminder of what was lost. The life Victoria and I had built together, now reduced to ashes. I sank onto the couch, the silence pressing in on me. The weight of my choices, of my anger, of my almost revenge, settled upon me like a suffocating blanket. I'd envisioned inflicting pain, but all I'd managed to do was amplify my own. I picked up a framed photo of Victoria from our wedding day. She was radiant, her smile blindingly beautiful. I remembered the vows we'd exchanged, the promises we'd made. They were just words now, empty and meaningless. With a choked sob, I hurled the photo across the room. It shattered against the wall, the glass and fragments of the frame scattering like the broken pieces of my heart. I didn't bother to clean it up. What was the point? The whole apartment felt contaminated, tainted by Victoria's betrayal, by my anger, by the ugliness of what I'd almost done. I spent the next few days in a haze of grief and self-loathing. I didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't answer the phone. I just existed, a ghost in my own life. Eventually, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Victoria was gone. My marriage was over. My life had been irrevocably altered. I knew I couldn't continue to wallow in self-pity. I had to pick up the pieces to find a way to move forward, but I had no idea how. One morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. The storm inside me had finally passed, leaving behind a quiet emptiness. It wasn't happiness, but it wasn't despair either. It was just nothing. I got out of bed, showered, and dressed. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. I looked around the apartment, taking in the mess, the broken photo frame, the scattered shards of glass. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, a road of healing, of forgiveness, of rebuilding. But I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had my friends, my family, my own strength to draw upon. I took a deep breath and walked to the window. The city stretched out before me, a vast and complex tapestry of life, and for the first time in days, I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to navigate this new reality. Maybe I could find a way to heal. Maybe, someday, I could even find a way to be happy again. But for now, all I could do was take one step at a time, one day at a time, and try to find some meaning in the emptiness. Then someone knocked on the door. I didn't know who it was,